This is in case you missed it for Thursday, March 30th and Friday, March 31st. Before we get into reading and Inspector Calls by J.B. Priestley, I want to go over some sort of societal expectations and class structure elements so that we feel super prepared going into reading this play. Their class structure is very different than ours. Their society is very different than ours. So it's imperative that you really know where these characters are coming from, why they act the way that they do, why certain kinds of manners or etiquette are in place within their structure. So, I first want you to think about the fact that there are a lot of ways in which individuals can interact with societal institutions. So, the way that we have a relationship between our individual selves and our society as a whole can be influenced by a lot of things. You can interact with all kinds of different social institutions, things like governmental institutions, court and legal systems, educational systems, family systems. Human language can change the way that we interact with certain systems. And all of these factors help us sort of set up and create societal norms and standards by which we behave and practice every day. And understanding class structure is really important for our play. So, this is where we are dividing people into groups based on their economic and social position. And sometimes we associate stereotypes or beliefs about people based on this kind of class structure. Sometimes we make assumptions based on that. And they were certainly doing that in Edwardian England in 1912. So, different social groups are often expected to follow certain kinds of social and group norms. And really, this kind of happens in two ways: etiquette, but also manners. And this is kind of how we group ourselves socially as well. And at that time, it was assumed stereotypically that those in the upper class, those that held the wealth and the money and the title and the power, were the ones that had the best manners, even though that is not necessarily true. And just for clarity, one's economic status just means like how much money they make or what their income is. A person's social status is usually defined as how much power someone has according to their society, and that can even be true today. A social norm is a behavior that society feels is normal and acceptable. And sometimes these things are not always written down, but they are sort of generationally understood. So, the difference between manners and etiquette. So, etiquette is like this set of rules, and this is how we deal with practicing manners. And manners are the common sense expressions of etiquette themselves. So manners can look like the way that you speak to someone, how you are kind, how you are polite, the kind of tone of voice you use, how you shake someone's hand, the kind of eye contact that you make, um, trying not to interrupt someone while they're speaking, things like that. Every society has their own kind of manners and etiquette to create social norms. And some societies, like the play we're going to read, have really strict and specific societal rules. They're very, very, very specific. So, in their time period, for sure, not only did the background that you were born into or the social class that you were born into dictate the kind of opportunities you got, but it also viewed, or this is how people in society viewed you and treated you, was based on your social class. It was like a badge of your identity. So if you were born in the working class or more like the middle class or the really upper aristocratic class, sorry, I couldn't quite get that word out, that determined how society treated you. And back then, it was nearly impossible to shift or move social class in any kind of way. You were kind of locked in. So I tried to give you an image with like what the dress or costume of the time period would look like to hopefully make this a little more relevant to you. So, in terms of hierarchy in the society, the play that we're going to read in Edwardian England, England in 1912, we have the upper class at the top. This is the highest social status. Usually, you had some kind of aristocratic title. You were a lord or a lady. Maybe you were a duke or a duchess, a baron, a baroness, a marquess, something like that. And generally, you had a whole lot of wealth and power, not necessarily always wealthy, but in most cases. And you certainly had influence over society. Then we can get into more of their middle class structure, where these people were probably well educated, possibly university or college if you were a man, maybe if you were a woman, and you were working in roles that required specific skills. This is where a lot of our owners of manufacturing lived. Like the family that we are going to read about, the father is a prosperous manufacturer. He owns his own factory. So they are upper middle class. And you definitely are earning more money than the working class, but maybe not necessarily viewed as super rich. And at the bottom of their social hierarchy, we have the working class, those who are doing a whole lot more physical labor kind of jobs. You were really paid for the hours that you work, not necessarily the skill set that you obtained through further education. And you were definitely paid less than others in your society. Okay, this is a list of vocabulary words I want to preview with you. I want you to paste this list onto page 35 from my notebook into yours. And we're going to go over some of these. So I picked these words based on the fact that we're not using a lot of these commonly in our own vernacular, the words and language and vocabulary that we use day to day. So it's going to make it a little easier to preview these before we read the play. That way you're like, oh, okay, I know what these words are. So we'll just go through them pretty quickly. An alcove is like a smaller, tiny recessed space in a room, like almost like a little cubby hole. A sideboard is a really old school kind of piece of furniture. So in their time period, you would have, I don't know, maybe sometimes up to 4 or 5 different sets of dishes, depending on the formality of your meal. And you needed places to store all of your dining ware. So very often a sideboard is where people would store their very fancy china or different kinds of dishes. I know that's unique. Not everyone has that anymore in our society. It's more common to have one set of dishes that you use in your home, or at least that's true in my home. The word imposing is an adjective, it's descriptive, and it means that something is really impressive because it is just so massive. If you were walking by the Empire State Building and looked up in New York City, that building would probably feel imposing because it is so incredibly large. Portentous is an adjective, and it means sort of marvelous and amazing, not necessarily always in a positive way, though. Gaily is being used as an adverb, so like joyful, lighthearted, cheery. You would do this with a smile on your face and a skip in your step. Reproachfully is an adjective that means full of or expressing shame. So if my dog does something wrong and I scold her for it and she kind of walks away with her tail tucked between her legs, that is, she walks away reproachfully. It's that kind of feeling. Pretenses is a noun, and that means it's like pretend or make believe, or sometimes even lies. So if you say that a whole argument is built on pretense or pretenses, it's built on lies. So usually has a negative connotation. The word officious is an adjective, and it means aggressively interfering or intrusive. You might think someone who is being officious is just super rude and annoying you because they keep interrupting you in different ways. Now, we have a very much $5 word here, imperturbable. It's a great fun word. It's an adjective, and it just means you are totally calm, completely serene. Nothing can mess with you or bother you. A trifle in this instance is being used as a noun. It means something that's just not very valuable, like it's really kind of insignificant. You may hear it in modern music as the word trifling. It's sort of a jargon word that gets used, and it means that a person is sort of not that important or very insignificant, or that they get obsessed with things that are not important. The word gallant is an adjective, it's descriptive. Think of like a medieval knight or someone that would be coming in to bravely rescue you. This is someone who's exceptionally polite and brave. It would be admirable what they do and how they are. Impudence is a noun. It is the quality of being rude. So if someone is being impudent, that's descriptive. Impudence is the noun, like they are acting with impudence. Another $5 word here, and pertinently, this is an adverb, and this is to be rude or be disrespectful. If you are questioning someone impertinently, it means you're being very rude while you interrogate them. Let me move my screen here just a little bit. Scruples is probably a word you will never see again, but it is in the play, and I want it to kind of make sense for you. So scruples, it is defined, they're noun, it's a noun, first of all, as ethical or moral considerations. What I want you to know of is it's sort of like a set of social standards. So in the play, you hear someone say, she did this with extraordinary scruples, thinking you have no right to act that way. How dare you access that system of moral and ethical considerations, thinking that you are too good to act with those kinds of scruples. So hopefully that helps you understand that word a little bit. It's a kind of a unique word. Okay, getting into reading. So I recommend if you're absent, I put the audio in Schoology today and a link to the play. So you can open both and listen to both. The audio is pretty darn close to the script. Just you'll have to pay attention, but it will help you because the voices are different. So that's a really good thing. But I really want you to read the stage directions and the character descriptions. That is really important because you're going to find out the way that they describe the living room, which is the set for the whole play, is that it is very old fashioned, very formal, very beautiful, but not cozy and not comfortable. So if you were in this house, it would feel like, oh my gosh, I got to be really careful and sit down so I don't break anything or hurt anything. This is not the kind of home that you have comfort in. And definitely be reading through those character descriptions. There is a paper assignment, and of course, you could just type it or share it with me if you want, if you're doing this from home. That's going to require you to document your first impressions of each character. We're going to meet, really, we're going to meet all 6 of the cast of characters today. So, what I want you to do is document your first impression of those characters. What do you think they're like? Can you make any predictions about them? Do they remind you of anything? That kind of thing. And if you're doing it from home, you can share it with me, or you can come grab a paper copy and turn it back in if you're absent. No big deal. And so as you're looking at the stage, it will look like this. Sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself in directions today. See, most of our action is right here in the middle. This is the table, dining room table, and a whole lot of our action is happening there. But we can see this set is simply the Burling's living room. Okay, so I kept this on the board as I was reading today to introduce our cast of characters. We first meet Mr. Arthur Burling, his wife, Mrs. Sybil Burling, their daughter, Sheila Burling, her brother, Eric Burling, and Mr. Gerald Croft. So as you are reading, and you can stop at the bottom of page 15, and this is Inspector Goole, we are introduced to the inspector as we get into the middle of this first act. But it'll be your job to sort of read and listen down through page 15. And it's kind of nice to listen. I think the character change kind of helps with the process, but you certainly don't have to. You can read right along if you want to. Okay. When you are finished reading, I want you to sort of immediately make your notations in that first impressions document. Like, who is this character? What did I think about them? What are they like? Who could I compare them to? So go ahead and capture those first impressions. Then I will have you open up the Inspector Calls vocabulary preview. This is very simple, guys. That vocabulary that I went over, this is just matching those definitions to the words themselves. It is just extra practice for vocabulary and words that are in the context of the play. And it's going to give you an extra chance to understand or comprehend that language as well. And that will conclude everything we're doing for today. And we will finish reading Act 1 and watch Act 1 next class.